filed lawsuit accuses Tyler Perry of assaulting an actor on one of the filmmaker's shows. Actor Derek Dixon has sued Perry for $260 million.
I will punch the hell out of you. Say something else.
That is my answer to Spike Lee. Go to hell.
Alan Payne was everywhere then. All at once, he was nowhere, just gone. At the height of House of Payne's run, when his face was burned into living room TV screens across America, he simply walked off set. No farewell tour, no press release, not even a cryptic tweet. For years, fans speculated, was it burnout, a personal loss, a spiritual awakening? But now, in the harsh fluorescent light of scandal, the whispers sound less like fiction and more like pattern. Alan Payne didn't vanish, he was pushed. And if the rumors are true, he's just one name on a very long, very quiet blacklist.
Of the timeline that it took for Derek Dixon to come forward with these allegations, if they're true.
Well, that's one of the arguments the defense always makes, right? Is, well, if you were assaulted or harassed, why did you stay? Why didn't you report it right away? What I love as a plaintiff's lawyer is a contemporaneous report. So hopefully they have that. And I understand he's been getting therapy since 2020.
They used to call it the Tyler Perry effect, a golden ticket for Black actors, writers, and production staff looking to break into Hollywood. But more and more, it's being described as something darker, a one-way street where your rise comes with a muzzle, and any resistance sends you straight into industry exile. Alan Payne, once the cornerstone of Perry's empire, is now rumored to be one of its most unsettling casualties. And he's not alone. Monique, Christian Keys, even unnamed extras who once populated the edges of Perry's shows have quietly disappeared, fired, faded, or forcefully retired, with no on-screen goodbyes and no clear explanations. This isn't a tinfoil hat theory anymore, it's a pattern, a chilling rhythm that pulses just beneath the surface of Black Hollywood. And it's finally beginning to spill. Monique said it plainly. She was whiteballed, not blackballed, by Black men with no backbone. She named names: Tyler, Oprah, Lee, and in her case, the punishment came swiftly, stripped of roles, buried in press narratives, and painted as difficult. And her crime? Asking to be paid for her work and refusing to promote Precious for free. Alan Payne's silence may have been less dramatic, but the consequences? Arguably just as devastating.
I think that when I first had to say, I've got to speak up.
And when Payne finally did return, quietly, almost like someone being walked back on stage at gunpoint, something was off. Visibly, audibly, unnervingly off. Gone was the confident smirk, the sharp timing, the spark. In its place, long, unnatural pauses, lines delivered like he was reading from a hostage note. His physicality was stiff, his eyes disconnected. For longtime fans, it wasn't nostalgia, it was uncanny. A husk in place of the man. And that eerie re-entry has given life to a new theory among former insiders, that Alan Payne didn't return of his own free will, but under contract, a very specific contract. They're calling it the Controlled Comeback Contract, allegedly drafted inside the upper ranks of Tyler Perry Studios. It's said to include a so-called redemption rider, a document so bizarre, so draconian, it borders on dystopian. According to those close to the machine, actors who want back in must sign away control of their tone, their posture, even their social media. One former staffer described it as Orwell in makeup. Smiling is mandatory, criticism is forbidden. If you want screen time again, you'll show up, shut up, and let the cameras roll. And in Alan's case, sources say, that's exactly what happened. But here's where it takes a truly surreal turn. Remember that quiet stretch, those years when Payne wasn't just off the air but completely off the grid? According to one former producer, that wasn't just a break, it was a retreat. Not the tropical, Instagrammable kind, something internal, corporate, paid for, and very, very hush-hush. Internally, they call it the secret retreat deal, a kind of off-books detox package allegedly offered to burned-out actors within Perry's orbit. But multiple sources claim it wasn't really therapy, it was a cleanup operation, an image fix, a silencing campaign wrapped in pastel mindfulness language. And once someone goes in, they don't come out until they're ready to comply.
And I hate to throw Tyler Perry under the bus, but Tyler Perry is very successful, but he does the same thing to our people the same way Hollywood does.
Now let's talk about the Holy Grail, the missing tapes. These aren't just rumors. They're obsessions among former Tyler Perry crew members, bloggers, and a handful of underground documentarians. Allegedly buried somewhere in the vast archives of Tyler Perry Studios, there's footage, not footage from the shows, rehearsal footage, closed set moments, behind-the-scenes breakdowns. According to one former assistant director, at least 2 tapes exist showing Perry unleashing verbally on actors, berating them over wardrobe, pacing, and even their personal lives. One of the tapes allegedly captures Alan Payne shaking, visibly distressed, being lectured as a full production crew looks away in silence. What's on those tapes exactly, nobody seems to know. But 3 separate insiders have claimed they've seen clips. One said Payne looked broken. Another claimed it was one of the ugliest things I've ever seen on a set. A third simply said, if that tape gets out, the whole thing collapses. The tapes, if real, could dismantle an empire, not just legally, but symbolically, because the image Tyler Perry has so carefully curated, that of the self-made mogul, the uplifting voice, the patron saint of Black resilience, would be impossible to reconcile with the man on those tapes. It would be the fall of Black Hollywood's most bulletproof brand.
Only for Tyler Perry to admit he did start a rumor that I was difficult to work with. He lied.
And still, no one talks. The fear is thick. Even actors not involved directly avoid the topic, and those who do speak, Monique, Cat Williams, Christian Keys, often end up silent again, fast, paid, threatened, nudged into quiet, we don't know, but the silence is coordinated, controlled. You don't need a conspiracy board to see that. There's one more layer, one that makes all of this even harder to ignore, the lawsuit. The $260 million bombshell dropped by actor Derek Dixon, who claims that Perry not only harassed and assaulted him, but used his influence to trap him in a coercive, exploitative dynamic. Dixon's lawsuit reads like a thriller script, full of texts, power plays, unwanted advances, and retaliation. Perry's team is denying everything, calling it a scam, but the documents are filed, the receipts are public, and the language inside is disturbingly specific. Do what I want, or your character perishes. That's the alleged threat. And if that tactic sounds familiar, it should. Multiple actors have used that same phrase when describing their exit from Perry's shows.
Certainly be helpful, in addition to the text message evidence that we had. Sometimes victims don't want to come forward, right? You're talking about a rich and famous individual, and look at what's happened. Perry's lawyer came out and said, this guy's lying. This is a shakedown. This is extortion, right? They always go after the victim. And we don't know if the allegations are true in this case or not, but very few harassment cases are reported or litigated. And often
we're watching something rare, a carefully controlled entertainment empire leaking through its seams. One actor disappears, another speaks out, then another sues, and all the while, Alan Payne stands in the middle, silent, shaken, and possibly holding the key to it all. Because if Payne ever confirms the rumors, if even one of those tapes sees daylight, it won't just be a scandal, it'll be a reckoning. And behind the glossy empire of Tyler Perry Studios, there's one phrase we keep hearing from those who've worked there, the test. Not a literal test, not something written down, something worse. According to multiple former collaborators, actors and crew were often subjected to what's being called Perry's private loyalty tests. These weren't auditions, these were psychological pressure cookers, subtle setups, sudden cold shoulders, manufactured gossip planted to see how someone would react. One actress who asked not to be named claims she was told a lie about a fellow castmate being fired, only to be asked what she thought, in confidence, just hours later. The next day, she was the one written off the script.
come forward, because if you're a victim, you're going to have to really tell your story in a very, very public way. What is interesting, though, is under California law, he could have filed as a John Doe or a Jane Doe, and he chose not to. So I thought that was interesting.
This isn't a normal workplace dynamic. It's a filtration system. You don't just get hired by Perry, you get watched, you get weighed. And if you pass the unwritten rules, the reward is everything. Bigger roles, better trailers, glowing social media coverage. But if you flinch, if you speak out, or worse, if you challenge him, you're out, vanished, just like Alan Payne. According to one crew member who worked on multiple seasons of House of Payne, Alan's slip wasn't dramatic, it wasn't a fight or a meltdown, it was one quiet conversation, a request for creative input, a suggestion about character development. And after that, he was iced out. Kept off call sheets, dialogue cut, scenes trimmed. Then, gone entirely. A textbook fail. Meanwhile, another actor, known for parroting Perry's lines to press, was given a spin-off and a producing credit. Coincidence, or a system rewarding silence and punishing independence?
If you're the defense, and do you look at that he didn't file as a John Doe and say, look, this is proof that this was a shakedown, which is the term that they've used?
Look, it's interesting. Obviously, the fact that he didn't file as a John Doe, that's not an argument that the defense can make. But really, and I've sued a lot of celebrities. I'm sitting here in Hollywood right now. I've represented some, but sued a lot more. So I've handled a lot of cases like this. Most of the time, the victims will come in, and when I explain what a lawsuit entails, they have pause, right?
This is where the walls close in. Because it's not just fear of losing a job, it's fear of losing access to an entire lane of visibility. Perry isn't just a producer. He's become, for some, the last remaining gatekeeper in Black Hollywood who actually answers his own phone. For many actors, especially those aging out of mainstream casting lists or emerging from theater backgrounds, Perry is the only one still greenlighting roles for people who look like them. And that leverage isn't just professional, it's cultural. The unspoken contract is brutal. Stay loyal, stay booked. Speak up, stay invisible. We've heard about the silent code from more than a dozen industry veterans, background extras, hairstylists, even caterers. Everyone's heard something. And everyone's been told not to repeat it, not if they want to work again. One actress, now relocated to Chicago, said the silence among Black creatives isn't just strategic, it's survival. We don't talk about what we saw, she said, because we know what happens if we do. You'll never get a call back. Your resume stops moving. You just evaporate.
So that's what we're faced with. When you allow somebody to come in between a relationship with a woman that you said, I'm like your mother. You said I'm like these things. I didn't ask you.
And maybe that's the scariest part, because Tyler Perry doesn't need to issue threats. He doesn't need to send cease and desists. The industry polices itself, and the silence is deafening. Take Monique. Her battle with Perry is the stuff of modern Hollywood folklore. She won the Oscar. She was at the top of her craft. And still, all it took was one no to a free press tour, and suddenly she was difficult. Suddenly, scripts dried up. Suddenly, her phone stopped ringing. For years, she begged for a public conversation, and when Perry finally offered to meet, it was under humiliating conditions. No husband, allowed, and only if she apologized first. Apologized for what? For being disobedient? For expecting her signature to mean something? This isn't mentorship, it's control disguised as opportunity. And if even Monique, with a gold statue in her hand, wasn't safe, who is? What's darker still is how the empire is structured to look benevolent. Perry built his studio on land that once housed a Confederate base. He named sound stages after Black legends. He cast underappreciated Black actors again and again. That symbolism makes it even harder for critics to speak out. To many in the community, Perry's success is sacred, a victory in an industry that routinely excludes Black voices. So when someone tries to pull back the curtain, they aren't just going up against a man. They're challenging a myth.
See, when I speak about Oprah Winfrey, and let me be clear, I love that sister, because she's our sister. She just got to come back across the street.
It's not just about contracts, screen time, or legal threats. It's about belief. Because Perry has done something few in Hollywood history have managed. He's wrapped his empire in the language of salvation. From the outside, he appears to be more than a mogul. He's a rescuer, a redeemer, the man who turned a Confederate Army base into a Black-owned film studio. The billionaire who houses royals, pays actors when no one else will, and funds entire productions out of pocket. The image he cultivates isn't merely successful, it's virtuous. And that's where it gets complicated. Because behind the scenes, that savior persona reportedly comes with an unspoken cost. Loyalty. Absolute, unwavering, performative loyalty. What makes Perry's system so hard to confront is how seamlessly generosity blurs into leverage. A struggling actor gets a break and suddenly feels indebted. A showrunner receives a green light no one else would grant and quickly learns which topics are off limits. In these dynamics, gratitude becomes currency, and questioning the terms of the deal can feel like betrayal, even when the deal was never fully explained. Several insiders have described the environment as emotionally loaded, where criticism is framed not just as dissent, but as disloyalty. In that climate, people don't just keep quiet to protect their careers, they stay quiet to protect the illusion.
All lies will be exposed, that's all. And anyone who takes that the wrong way, know why they take it the wrong way.
That illusion becomes especially dangerous when it shields real harm. When someone in power is viewed as a deliverer, as someone who has lifted up an entire community, their behavior becomes harder to scrutinize. Victims hesitate, because accusing the savior can feel like attacking the salvation. That's the trap of the so-called cult of the billionaire savior. It's not built on threats. It's built on thanks. And Perry's ability to weaponize that gratitude has allowed him for years to operate without meaningful checks, even as accusations swirled and reputations crumbled quietly behind the scenes. The contradiction is staggering. On one hand, he funds Black stories, employs Black talent, and owns the largest film studio in the South. On the other, we hear about secret writer clauses, coerced silence, and behavior monitoring on set. The man who built a studio where no one else would becomes the man who allegedly controls it like a fortress. And those who step out of line, whether by accident or by principle, aren't just seen as difficult well, they're treated like traitors to the cause. In that way, the Perry machine doesn't just mirror a corporate power structure, it mimics the toxic shape of a messiah complex. And now, as lawsuits pile up and rumors escalate, the moral lines are starting to blur. Are we looking at an empire unraveling or a belief system finally cracking under pressure? For those still inside the machine, it's an impossible choice. Stay silent and protect the image, or speak up and become the enemy of the very man who gave them a stage. That's not just business, that's psychological captivity. And it's why the silence has held for so long, because when someone is crowned a savior, exposing the truth can feel like heresy.
Because, you know, everyone cares about the reputation in Hollywood, and whether it's cancel culture or just bad press, it can force a defendant to settle. So that's a tool that you have to use if you're a plaintiff's attorney representing victims like this.
And now, with Derek Dixon's lawsuit dragging headlines into courtrooms, some insiders are quietly wondering if the final thread is starting to snap. That $260 million case is no longer just about harassment, it's about power, about manipulation, about retribution. Dixon's allegations mirror stories we've heard whispered for years. Alleged threats that roles would vanish if advances weren't accepted, alleged promotions offered with strings, alleged silence bought in chunks of cash, NDAS and pilot deals that never aired. And suddenly, we're hearing about the tapes again. This time, not just as myth, a former network executive, anonymous, but long connected to Perry's BBT Productions, claims someone in the post-production chain might be sitting on a hard drive. A drive with clips that didn't make it to the archives. Clips that allegedly show Perry berating actors, mocking breakdowns, throwing tantrums over line readings. Clips that could not only validate Derek Dixon's case, but expose a culture of pressure and punishment stretching back over a decade. If those tapes exist and if they leak, they won't just embarrass one man. They could drag others into the spotlight. Agents, publicists, studio partners, all the people who saw, who heard, who shrugged. And if those people go down, the ripple effects won't stop with Perry. The entire network of quiet deals and complicit silence could finally be forced into the open. The question now is, who's ready to talk?
Well, Tyler Perry, you never worked with me. We never worked together. When we did Precious, you came on after we said cut, that's a wrap and it's over.
Will someone inside the machine finally name names? Will that hard drive ever surface? Or will Perry's grip hold just long enough for the story to fade again? We want to hear from you. Is this the beginning of a long overdue reckoning in Black Hollywood? Or is Tyler Perry simply too powerful, too protected, and too mythologized to ever fall? Drop your thoughts, your theories, your fury in the comments. And don't just scroll, engage, because silence is how this system survives. Until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and never forget, sometimes the real drama isn't on the screen, it's behind the camera.